this opportunity to share my perspective on graduate unemployment with you, and especially what graduates themselves can do to help to change this issue. I have titled my presentation to you for this afternoon, Highly Qualified and Unemployable, the Dilemma of 21st Century Graduates. I immediately want to challenge the whole idea of this unemployability. When we look at the statistics of the quarterly labor surveys, we actually find that the figures indicate that about 6% of those with university degrees find themselves unemployed. And not just that, when we look at that, we see that if we compare them to the general labor market and the levels of unemployment, with a level of about 45% employment for those with a grade 7 and lower education, for those with a grade 12 and lower, about 45% unemployment, then we immediately see that graduates find them in a much better position than the rest of the labor market. So why is it that we spend so much time and energy with our ideas about graduate unemployability? In my work, working with graduates and mostly postgraduate students, I am often deeply concerned with their level of underpreparedness for the labor market out there. They often come, paralyzed with fear that they're not going to get a job. And my question is, but how easy that a person with a PhD in mathematics, a person busy with a PhD in chemistry, can be fearful that they're not going to get a job? When we read reports on economics, on the growth and the needs for development in our society, we are told that these are people that are highly sought after, yet the individual students see themselves as unemployable. So in my work mentoring these students, I actually try to focus on how can we change their perceptions about what they can offer to the labor market. How can I change their focus away from what the labor market will mean to them, what the labor market will give them in terms of salaries, in terms of creature comforts, in terms of security, and rather start focusing on a level of self-awareness that will help them to show prospective employers what it is that they can contribute to the different organizations out there. In my daily individual interviews with these students, it is as if they see the point of graduation as the summit of the mountain of a career that they will actually climb. They often don't look any further than that. And then when they get close to the point of graduation, they feel that they're at the edge of this precipice after graduation because they don't know where to go to from that specific point. So in our work mentoring these students, we need to build bridges to help them to actually have the courage to go over the edge of this specific mountain so that they can find themselves at the foot of a next mountain, the mountain of building a career. Why do I use this metaphor of mountains? Except for the fact that I love mountains, and there's nothing more exhilarating than walking, in fresh mountain air. Finding yourself at the top of a mountain and seeing the vistas in front of you. It's only then when you really can appreciate the greatness of this earth that we find ourselves on. But in many ways, there are many similarities between climbing a mountain and building a career. And that's what I help students to try and understand. I have developed a framework that I call Aspire. Aspire is a framework that is based on the so-called sought-after attributes that employers look for in prospective employees, whether they are graduates or not. Aspire stands for attitude, We know that the top attribute looked for by employers is people having the right attitude, self-discipline, passion, innovation, initiative, creativity, resilience, and lastly, engagement. This Aspire framework will help students, if they can develop each of these components, it will help them to bridge over to the field of gainful employment. Attitude, what is this so-called right attitude? It's an attitude of a sense of agency, understanding that just as much as your circumstances influence you, you influence your circumstances as well. Understanding that by controlling your emotions, your behaviors, as well as your thoughts, you actually exert an influence on the environment around you. One day I was busy in a selection interview, talking to students about, prospective selection for clinical psychology. And I saw that a person actually is busy with an honors in sign language. I was quite impressed because, what's the possibilities of her helping deaf clients to express their ideas? I asked her about this. She said to me, I'm actually working at a university and I'm just doing this because I can do it for free and I'm just killing time. The only thing that she killed was her opportunity to get selected for that course, nothing else. Because how on earth can you do something like that without understanding what is the possibility of doing something like that? And I often see this in students as well. They have this idea of, I will graduate, but they don't understand what it is that they are currently developing. We need a greater sense of self-awareness of what it means to complete a degree, the ability to plan, the ability to use your time effectively. And students don't understand just how important these skills are. But not just, a sense of agency, but also the sense of mastery, the understanding and the appreciation for how important it is to have confidence in your ability to be able to do something. We will never start climbing mountains if we don't at least have the belief that we might succeed in getting to the top of the mountain. But also, doing that, you at least need a previous experience of knowing that you have done something like that relatively successfully. One of the complaints of many postgraduate students is, but I do not get employment because people are looking for experience. It is so, but in many of those adverts, they do not say what type of experience. So, once again, being self-aware of the type of experience that you have already developed, those things that you have done that can count as experience is extremely important. And we try to help students to portray that in their CVs, to show what have I done and what are the competencies, the skills and attributes that I have developed in this process. Self-discipline. It is madness to try and climb a mountain without preparing for the process. It takes a plan. It takes a specific goal, and then it takes hours and hours of building fitness and stamina to actually get there. And students, are not always open for this idea of a rigorous exercise routine that will help you to develop those skills. It is as if many of our students, prefer rather to wait another 6 or 7 months to get a job than starting at the bottom of the rung of a career ladder. We know when we talk to very successful people, they will tell you that great careers consist of a series of jobs. Many of those jobs not that important. Many of us start at the bottom rung where we do work that for other people do not seem to be so important. But if the work is there and it needs to be done, you can still learn from that to help you to prepare and develop for the future. Passion is an extremely important attribute to have. Passion is actually the energy that fuels our day-to-day activities to build the skills that we're going to need. One of the best examples of passion that I have seen was 3 weeks ago in Namibia. I met a mountain guide. His work is to take tourists to rock engravings. Every day he takes these tourists, sometimes 7, 8, 9 times a day, up the same route to show them these engravings. He did not complete the equivalent of a matric in South Africa, yet he can speak 6 languages because that helps him to communicate with tourists. He can speak German, French, Spanish, Vambo, which is his native language, as well as Afrikaans and English. But that itself wasn't the only thing that impressed me. It was his engagement, his knowledge of archaeology and history of the environment that he gathered to share with tourists. And it's clear that it makes him very sought after by tourists, and in the process he gets a lot of money for that. And it's only because of his passion. If you have that passion, then there's no excuse for the lack of resources, because, you know, the passion fires that interest to go and look and find the resources that you need. Initiative. We look for people who have that skill that can solve problems in a unique way. We need that flexibility, that if we don't have the means, if we don't have the resources, we can actually, you know, get by, make different plans. A very good example of initiative is our Coffee Gaming League group, who've decided that they're going to turn their interest in electronic gaming into something that they will share with the whole campus. And, you know, they're so driven for this that one of them even planned to rent, you know, the stadium in Bloemfontein so that they can have like a big event. But they started out very small, and it's through that initiative, by doing this, that they have established such a gaming league. If I was an employer, even though the student has got or is busy with a PhD in chemistry, I will employ him for that initiative, because that initiative led to a point where he can show me that he can plan a project, execute a project, and constantly develop and grow the specific project. Resilience. Building a career is not a straight path. It's often a path that is characterized by valleys and hills. There are many failures, there are many disappointments along the way, and our students need to realize that. So in my work with them, where I help them to develop their CVs, I ask them, but how did you cope with your disappointments along the way? Show me in your CV, how did you deal with things that did not work out? A PhD in mathematics student, she worked on a mathematic model that formed the basis of her work. And then after 2.5 years, she realized that this model is not actually applicable to the specific work. And she had to start again. So it was quite a setback for her. It was only then, when I was working with her, that I realized that my background, working with trauma and doing trauma counseling, is actually very relevant for helping people doing research, because there's nothing as traumatic as starting anew with a research project. But students underestimate how important these things are. We sometimes have this one-sided view that failure, you know, is actually unacceptable. Failure is things that should not form part of our experience. We learn much more from our failures than what we sometimes learn from our successes. And we need to encourage students to turn this disappointment and failure into a learning experience that can help them to elevate them to a next level. Lastly, engagement. No organization will be successful without good teamwork. And students should realize how important it is to develop proper communication skills, the ability to, for their day-to-day communication, to communicate clearly, to develop their skills to present ideas. It's very difficult working with people who do not communicate with you. But not just that. If you want to take your career to a next level, you need the ability to present your ideas to a larger audience, but also you need to be able to put that in writing. And I am deeply concerned for what I see in the quality of students' written work as well. It is as if there's just no attention to detail. They all believe, that as long as they've got the work in, that should be sufficient. These 6 components or attributes are actually the building blocks of our success. I encourage students to make sure that they show and reflect in their CVs as well as in their interviews that they have developed these skills, because I know how important it is for future employers. And then once we've worked with that, I actually challenge them to go over the edge, the comfort of being, still a student, the relaxed environment that many of them actually have at university, to go over the edge like base jumpers and to take that next step, to use their aspirations, the vision that they have, but then to support that with meaningful action that starts at a very early point in their academic careers. You do not start preparing for employment in the final stages of your degree or your postgraduate degree. You start with that long before that, knowing and actively developing the skill set that you have. Thank you so much for your time.